Kira pressed her back to the cold metal wall of the Galactic Academy cafeteria and tried to make herself small. It never worked. Her violet skin marked her the moment she stepped into any room of flare in a sea of muted tones and shifting lights. Around her, the cafeteria hummed with the everyday chaos of 1,000 species trying to coexist. Crystalline students from Qua moved in clusters, their bodies chiming softly as they brushed past each other, each step scattering rainbow refractions across the floor. Energy forms drifted near the ceiling in slow spirals, their pulsing colors, conveying whole conversations without sound. Dran with gleaming scales and forked tongues gathered around heat vents. Maya clicked their mandibles and gestured with 6 arms at once. And then there was Kira, alone, as usual, clutching her tray of mandatory nutrition paste. The gray substance sat in a perfect, unappetizing mound, engineered for nutritional balance and flavored like damp paper and regret. Complaining would change nothing. The Academy had rules for everything, rules designed to make life fair and functional for dozens of biologically incompatible species. It was just that somehow, fairness always felt like punishment when it landed on her. She crossed the room with careful steps, keeping her gaze down, aware of how conversations dipped when she passed. Not fully silent people tried not to be, obvious but quieter, thinner, as if her presence stole oxygen. She reached her usual table in the far corner. It was built for 8 students. It always held one. The empty chairs around her might as well have been ringed with force fields. She'd stopped hoping someone might sit beside her weeks ago. Hope took too much energy. Disappointment hurt too much. Kira lowered herself into the same seat, the one angled away from the busiest path, and began to eat. A spoonful, a swallow, another spoonful. The paste slid down like a chore. She knew exactly why no one sat with her. Everyone did, 200 years ago. The Nethari had carved a bloody path through this sector of space. 17 worlds burned before the Galactic Coalition stopped the expansion. Her history texts called it an era of territorial consolidation. Everyone else used the word that tasted like acid, genocide. Her great-great-grandmother had been a general. Kira had been born long after the peace treaties, long after the reparations, long after the coalition stamped, reconciled onto official documents, and declared the past resolved. But documents didn't change what people remembered. They didn't change the photos in memorial halls, the empty seats at family tables, the ruins that still hadn't been rebuilt. The Academy had accepted her under the Coalition's Reconciliation Initiative proof. That 50 years of peace meant the Nethari could finally send students to study alongside the species they'd once tried to conquer. Lucky her. She got to be a living apology, a symbol of progress nobody wanted near their lunch. Across the cafeteria, a cluster of crystalline Qua students glanced toward her, then quickly turned away. One of them didn't bother pretending. His facets sharpened whenever he saw her, his glare like splintered glass. His family had lost a colony world to the Nethari. Kira didn't blame him for hating her. That didn't make it easier to carry. She swallowed another spoonful of paste, then pulled her datapad close and pretended to study. The screen displayed the days assigned reading. Earth Biology, one of the newest additions to the galactic curriculum. Humans had achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 years ago, which made them infants by interstellar standards. Yet they'd integrated with alarming speed. Her textbook described them as adaptable, social, and most strikingly inclined to form bonds across species barriers. Kira wondered what that felt like. To be welcomed instead of tolerated. To be seen as an individual instead of a shadow cast by ancestors. Her datapad chimed. A message from her mother back on Nethari. "How are your studies going? Sweetness, making friends." Kira's finger hovered over the reply. She could lie. She could send something bright and simple and safe. Her mother would hear the hollowness anyway. She always did. Kira shut the datapad off and went back to her paste. Around her, laughter burst from a nearby table. 6 different species sat together, swapping jokes and sharing contraband snacks and leaning into each other's space. Like it belonged to them, the galaxy, it seemed, had moved forward. Everyone except her. She waited until the cafeteria thinned. She always did. Less chance of walking past groups who went quiet. Less chance of hearing the soft, cruel nothing of being ignored. She was staring at the grey mound, calculating how many bites were left, when something slammed down across from her. The sound cracked through her thoughts like a whip. Kira jerked, spoon midair, and looked up expecting someone had made a mistake. Instead, she found a human boy already settling into the seat opposite her, as if he'd been invited. He had messy brown hair, a grin that looked too wide for the situation, and the kind of posture that said the universe was a place that liked him. He unzipped a bag and began pulling out containers. A smell flooded the air, warm, rich, tangy, spiced, with herbs she didn't recognize. Her stomach reacted instantly, rumbling in a way nutrition paste had never managed. "Hey," he said, like it was the most normal thing in the galaxy to sit with the Nethari girl everyone avoided. He nodded at her tray. "That stuff looks absolutely disgusting. You ever had pizza?" Kira blinked. "Pizza? Okay, so you haven't." He popped open a thermal container and lifted out a triangular slice of something layered and steaming. Melted yellow substance stretched across the top. Red circles glistened with oil. "This is pizza," he announced. "Pepperoni pizza. It's basically bread with tomato sauce, cheese, and meat. Trust me, way better than grey sludge." He held it out. Kira hesitated. Sharing food was sacred in many cultures, including hers. It was an offering, trust, connection, a claim of kinship. Things she didn't have here. But the smell was intoxicating, and something in the boy's expression casual, bright, unafraid made refusal feel stranger than acceptance. She took the slice carefully. The cheese stretched and snapped. When she bit into it, flavor detonated. Across her tongue, salt and fat and spice and sharp tang, layered like a song building into harmony. Her eyes widened before she could stop them. The human laughed, delighted. "Good, right?" Kira swallowed, stunned. "It's incredible. I'm Tyler," he said, and stuck out a hand. "Tyler Beck. I saw you sitting alone and figured." Nobody should have to eat lunch by themselves. Also, I have way too much food. My mom keeps sending care packages like I'm dying out here. Kira stared at his offered hand. Then, awkwardly, she touched its warm skin against her cooler violet fingers. He didn't flinch. Over the next 3 weeks, Tyler showed up every day. Sometimes he brought pizza again. Sometimes he brought foods that were a mess to eat, but impossible not to love. Burgers stacked with vegetables and sauces. Tacos that fell apart and somehow tasted better for it. Spaghetti that was just long strands of pasta drowned in red sauce. Mac and cheese that felt like a warm blanket made edible. But more than food, he brought conversation. He asked questions like curiosity was his native language. What was Netta like? Did Nethari really have 2 hearts? What did she think of Professor Thane's xenobiology program? What music did her people listen to? What stories did they tell their children? No one had ever asked her those things here. Everyone was too busy remembering the wars. One day, while chewing on a sandwich, Tyler said, "So your people went through an empire phase." "Yeah, that sucked. But you know what humans were doing a few hundred years ago to world wars, nuclear bombs, slavery, genocides. We did horrific things to each other based on skin color and borders and religion." Kira frowned. "That's different, is it?" Tyler shrugged. "Pain is pain. Death is death. The point is we grew past it. Your people grew past it. You didn't do any of that stuff. So why should anyone hold it against you?" It was such a simple idea that it almost made her angry. Not at him, at the fact that no one else seemed capable of it. Then Tyler started bringing friends. Rachel arrived first, a human girl with short red hair and the expression of someone permanently unimpressed by physics. She sat down, looked Kira up and down once, and said, finally, someone who might actually understand quantum mechanics. "These idiots think science is boring." Blake came next, carrying a guitar and playing music during lunch, his fingers coaxing chaotic, emotional vibrations out of metal strings. Kira found herself fascinated by how human music didn't try to be perfect. It tried to be honest. Becca joined them too, a xenobiology student like Kira, who immediately began rapid-firing questions about Nethari physiology. With the zeal of someone collecting rare specimens, except she listened, truly listened, to every answer. They treated Kira normally. They argued with her about homework, complained about professors, asked her opinions on art and politics, and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. They spoke to her like she was Kira first and Nethari second sometimes. Miraculously, not Nethari at all. Slowly, other students noticed. A Maya student started nodding at her in the corridors. Adran asked to borrow her notes, small acknowledgements, tiny bridges. Then one day, Kira arrived at lunch and found 2 aliens sitting with Tyler's group, a qua student named Vin, and an energy being named Ulra. They looked tense, but they were there. "Hope you don't mind," Tyler said lightly. "Vin's in my astrophysics class, and Ulra needed help with chemistry. Figured we could all eat together." At first the conversation was stiff. Vin kept glancing at Kira as if expecting her to sprout weapons, Lyra's energy pulsed uncertainly. But Tyler kept talking, asking Vin about crystalline growth patterns, asking Lyra about energy-based consciousness like the whole mix was natural, like it had always been possible. By the end of lunch, Vin was explaining how qua bodies repaired fractures, and Lyra was pulsing with colors Kira recognized as amusement. They made plans to meet in the library that evening, walking to class. Afterward, Kira realized the halls felt lighter, not safe, not completely, but less hostile, less heavy. She messaged her mother that night. Studies are going well. And yes, I'm making friends. Real ones. Her mother replied instantly. I'm so proud of you. Sweetness. I knew you'd find your place. Kira stared at the words until her eyes burned. Maybe she could belong. Then Professor Thane announced the semester's major project. You will work in teams of 4, he said, scales gleaming under lecture hall lights. His forked tongue flicked a sign of excitement. Mixed species teams. Your task is to design a theoretical resource distribution system for planets. Recovering from armed conflict, 40% of your final grade. Kira's stomach dropped. Group projects were nightmares. They meant awkward scanning, the silent calculus of who would tolerate whom, and the familiar certainty that she'd be chosen last if at all. Students immediately began clustering, trading looks, forming teams before Thane finished speaking. Kira lowered her gaze to her datapad, pretending to take notes. If she didn't look up, it wouldn't sting as much when everyone paired off without her. I want Kira on my team. Tyler's voice rang out across the hall. Kira's head snapped. Up so fast her neck clicked. Tyler stood with his hand raised, grinning like he'd just volunteered for a pizza taste test. The room went quiet. Dozens of eyes swung toward her. Heat crawled up her skin. Her violet darkened toward bruised indigo. Before she could protest, before she could tell him he didn't have to risk his standing, Vin stood. As well, I will join that team, Vin said, their voice chimming softly. Lyra's energy brightened. I am also interested in this team configuration. Just like that, Kira had a team. Not leftovers, not charity. People who had chosen her. They met that evening in a study room. Tyler brought cookies. Vin set up a holographic display. And Lyra hovered near the ceiling, pulsing thoughtful. Purples and blues. As Tyler summarized the assignment, Vin made a point about centralized systems failing because those in power hoarded resources. Something in Kira's chest shifted. A memory surfaced. Her grandmother's stories about the devastated years after the wars, when Netta had been sanctioned and broken. My people dealt with this, she said quietly. The others turned toward her. Kira swallowed, then continued. After the wars, Netta was shattered. The old government collapsed. We had limited resources and millions displaced. The Reconstruction Council designed the network distribution protocol. Thousands of local distribution nodes, each community managed its own resources. But all nodes were connected through a shared encrypted data network. Surpluses rerouted automatically to deficits. Transparency built in. Vin brightened like sunrise through crystal. That's brilliant. A decentralized system prevents a single point of corruption, Lyra added, colors flashing excited. Yellow, and shared verification ensures fairness. Tyler leaned forward. Can we scale it? Entire planets? Multiple planets? Kira's hands moved on her datapad, sketching faster than her nerves. If we adapt the quantum encryption for interplanetary delays account for signal lag, ideas piled into each other. Vin proposed crystalline relay stations. Ura suggested energy signature verification to prevent fraud. Tyler kept spotting practical issues: damaged infrastructure, hostile zones, resource theft. They worked until the lights dimmed, and a security drone buzzed past twice without interfering. At midnight, Tyler produced brownies. Kira took one bite and understood why humans spoke about chocolate with reverence. It was happiness made solid. When they finally left at 2 in the morning, they had a framework strong enough to hold worlds, and Kira had something else too. For the first time, her history wasn't only a stain. It was knowledge. It was useful. 3 weeks later, their presentation hall was packed. Kira sat stiffly, watching the first 2 teams present standard proposals. Her team was third. Her heartbeat thudded like a warning siren. Tyler bounced his leg beside her. "We've got this," he whispered. Kira nodded, though her throat felt tight. Across the room, Z sat with older Qua students' faces hard, edges sharp. When their team stepped up, Kira forced herself to breathe and began speaking. She explained decentralization, transparency, interconnected nodes. Vin described infrastructure. Lura ran simulations. Tyler handled implementation. They were halfway through when Z stood abruptly. "I formally challenge this student's right to present," he declared. "I challenge her right to attend this academy at all." The hall erupted. Kira's vision narrowed. Her hands trembled. This was the moment she'd feared since Rival. Professor Thane cracked his tail against the floor, demanding silence. "Explain yourself." Z's facets glinted like knives. "She is Nethari. Her people murdered millions. They destroyed my family's world. And now we are supposed to listen to her speak about fair distribution after they stole resources from conquered planets." Each word struck like a physical blow. Kira wanted to run, to disappear, to stop being the symbol everyone could hate safely. Before she could speak, Tyler stepped forward. Gone was the grin. His face was set, furious. "You want to talk about history," he said quietly, and somehow the entire hall heard him. "Fine. Let's talk about history." He listed atrocities like a ledger. The Qua Empire's enslavements, Energy Collective massacres, Dran experiments, Maya genetic coercion. He turned slowly, meeting eyes. "Every species in this room has blood in its history," he said. "Every single one, humans included. We had slavery. We had genocide. We killed each other by the millions." His voice sharpened. The Nethari expansion was horrific. What they did was wrong. But Kira didn't do it. She was born long after. She came here to learn and contribute, and she is succeeding. He pointed at their hologram. "Our system is built on her people's reconstruction protocol, the same kind of work that helped them rebuild and join the coalition peacefully. It could save lives on war-torn planets, but you'd reject it because you'd rather cling to Old hatred then moved forward, silence fell, heavy and absolute. Then older qua students rose beside Z. This requires a tribunal, one declared. We request a review of her admissions status. Professor Thane's tail twitched in displeasure. Very well, a tribunal will be scheduled. This presentation is suspended. Kira's legs gave out. She sank into her seat, vision blurring. Vin's hand cool crystal touched her shoulder gently. Lyra's energy wrapped around her in a soft, steadying pulse. Tyler sat beside her, breathing hard. I'm sorry, he whispered. I probably made it worse. Kira shook her head. No one's ever defended me like that. Get used to it, Tyler said. Firm. You have friends now. The week before the tribunal was the longest of Kira's life. She went through motions without tasting food or hearing lectures. Even contraband pizza sat untouched. Meanwhile, Tyler disappeared for hours. Rachel, Blake, Becca busy, Vin and Lyra absent at odd times. What are you doing? Kira finally asked. Tyler's grin returned the one that meant trouble. Don't worry about it. The night before the tribunal, Kira packed her belongings. Might as well be ready. A knock came. Tyler stood in the doorway with everyone. Vin, Lyra, Rachel, Blake, Becca. They crowded into her small room like they belonged there. Pre-tribunal pizza party. Tyler announced, You need to eat. I'm not hungry. Tough. Rachel said, dropping onto Kira's bed. Eat anyway. They stayed for hours, telling stories, making her laugh despite the fear lodged in her ribs. No one mentioned expulsion. No one said goodbye. When they finally left, Tyler paused at the door. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. Kira narrowed her eyes. Tyler, what did you do? He only winked and vanished. Down the hall, the next morning, Kira walked to the tribunal hall expecting judgment and hostility. Instead, she found hundreds of students packed inside, every species, every section of the academy, mixed together, shoulder to shoulder, filling seats, aisles, doorways, silent, waiting. Kira froze in the entrance. Tyler waved her forward. As she moved through the crowd, students nodded at her, some familiar, many strangers. What is this? She whispered when she reached Tyler. This, he said simply, is solidarity. The professor's panel looked shaken. Someone tried to call for the room to clear. A human student stood. Then we'll wait. Another voice. We've got time. No one moved. Kira's tears spilled. Hot and unstoppable, but for once, they weren't shame. They were relief. After frantic whispers and hurried consultations, Professor Thane stood and announced, This tribunal is postponed pending further review by the Coalition Education Committee. Z protested. Thane's tail snapped once. I can, and I am. In the days that followed, Kira learned what her friends had been doing. Tyler had contacted mixed species teams across the academy, collecting data. He documented success rates, innovation metrics, collaboration outcomes. Rachel had helped design the presentation. Blake had organized the silent protest. Becca had coordinated student groups across species lines. Vin had spoken to qua peers. Ra had convinced dozens of energy forms to attend. They'd sent everything to the Coalition Education Committee with a petition signed by more than 60% of the student body demanding the tribunal be cancelled and protections against heritage-based discrimination strengthened. "You did all this for me?" Kira asked, overwhelmed. "Not just for you," Tyler corrected. "For everyone. If they can expel you for your ancestors, they can do it to anyone. We either move forward together or we stay trapped in the past." A week later, the committee's announcement arrived. The tribunal was cancelled. New policies were implemented. Students could face consequences for their own actions, but not for historical conflicts their species had participated in. Z withdrew his complaint the same day. Whether from genuine change or pressure, Kira didn't. No, maybe a bit of both. The semester ended 2 weeks later. Their project received the highest grade in the class. Professor Thane called it innovative, deeply researched. And though he didn't say it aloud worth the chaos it had caused. On the last day before summer break, Kira sat in the cafeteria at a table that was always full now. Tyler, Rachel, Blake, Becca, Vin, Laura, and a dozen others from 9 different species argued about food like it was their sacred duty. "Pineapple on pizza is a crime against nature," Vin insisted, facets flashing. "It's sweet and savory perfection." Tyler shot back. "I appreciate complexity," Vin said primly. "And I appreciate not ruining perfectly good food," Rachel added. Kira watched them bicker, warmth spreading through her chest like sunlight. 6 months ago, she'd eaten alone, convinced she would never belong. Now the table overflowed. With laughter, with disagreements, with chosen family. "You're quiet," Tyler said, nudging her elbow. "I was just thinking," Kira replied softly. 6 months ago, I sat alone every day. I thought I'd never belong here. And now," she gestured at the crowded table, at the mixed groups scattered around. The cafeteria, at the way students sat together without flinching at old histories. Rachel smirked. "Now you're stuck with us." Kira smiled and realized it was real. "I am." Tyler lifted his cup to being weird. Around the table, cups and containers lifted held by hands, claws, tendrils, energy fields representing a dozen worlds united in one simple truth, to being weird. They echoed, and Kira understood. Finally, that home wasn't a planet or a species. Home was wherever people saw you for who you truly were and chose to stand beside you anyway.